Welcome back to Speedplayz Chess, where we use technology to try to improve our play. And today, I'm coming at you with a video about the Jobava London system as taught by Grandmaster Simon Williams on his Chessable course at chessable.com. So I bought this course a couple years ago. I started learning what I could and watching the videos, and what I quickly found out as a novice player that chess is hard, and there are a lot of variations here. You can see there are 213 trainable variations, 13 alternative, and 50 informational variations. And I quickly got overwhelmed and not sure really what to do. But I did, so I kind of gave up on it a little bit. What I did continue doing is playing these first three moves where we get 3 bishop f4 in. So I kept playing that, and I lost a lot of games and won some games. And what we're going to do now is explore what 4 variations should a novice player interested in learning the Jobava London system, what 4 lines should you consider focusing on first in order to get, in my opinion, the most out of this opening. So we're going to come over to chess.com, and we can see here that I have played 3 bishop f4 147 times. And so this is a typical opening position. Sometimes I'll get to it like this, basically the same position. And there's the same 147. So sometimes I get there a little bit differently, but on move 3 we're playing bishop f4. So what we're going to do is explore now the 4 main lines that you should consider learning as a novice player. Now, if you're rated 1,000, 1,200 and above, some of this is going to be really, really obvious. If you're a newer player or a novice player like myself, I'm hoping, my goal is to cut down the amount of lines that you need to try to figure out what to focus on. Because a lot of these lines that you're going to, that are not played at my level are things like this. You can see I've only been in this position twice out of 147 games. So this doesn't, even though this is one of the main lines of the Jobava London, it is definitely not something that I would recommend an 800, 700 player focus on. So we're going to focus on is the 4 main lines that I recommend learning as a novice. So first line is going to be obvious to anybody who is not a novice or a complete beginner, is this knight c6 move that has happened almost twice as many times as bishop f5. Now, this is a huge mistake, and I'm not going to explain too much of it, but if you're in the 700, 800, 900 range rating on chess.com, most of these are rapid games, by the way, 10-minute games. I've run into this all the time. I'll get at least a game with 3 knight c6 a week, sometimes more often. And they seem to happen in bunches. So if I get it one game, I usually get it again in a couple more games for some reason. But this knight c6 is a huge mistake. And as a beginning player, there's nothing more satisfying knowing how to exploit the c7 square. So you can see in this position right here, if we were to be able to get a knight right here, this square is extremely vulnerable. It has lots of opportunities to cause damage, and there's very few ways to refute this. So what you want to do as a novice player interested in the Jobava London is get your wins. You want to get your wins in this position because you're likely to see it a lot. And you can see I've got about a 72% winning rate against this. And the move is knight b5, and most of the time, I call this the Muppet. Your opponent is just, hey, I'm supposed to get my knights out. I'm supposed to get my pieces out. They're not really seeing what you're doing yet, because at our level, at our novice level, it's hard for us to understand what our opponent's ideas are. And so the Jobava London provides a terrific starting point for an opening track. And so since I see this so much, you can see 60 times out of 147 games, I'm going to recommend that you learn how to take advantage of this. And when this move happens right here, what we see a lot after knight b5 is a long thinking process where my opponent will go, oh no, I forgot about my c pawn. And so the most of the time after a long pause, you will see this e5 move. And the most important thing to remember here is to take with the bishop. You don't want to take with the pawn, you want to take with the bishop. And oftentimes you end up in a nice position like this. And then if you want to rack up brilliant moves on chess.com, every single time I make this move, the computer says it's brilliant. But I've run this through the computer a bunch of times and created my own Chessable course, which anyone can do for free. I think a free account can have up to 4 of their own. Well, I've made a white repertoire of my own, and you can see I've called it the Muppet. And I have practiced the Muppet variations over and over and over again. So I know that this queen move is a brilliant move. And usually they have to take with the queen, and then you get this beautiful royal fork, and you win the queen back afterwards. So usually do this, you win the queen back, and then they often do something like this. You can see it's happened. The most common move is that, and they just run right into the same fork again, and you end up winning the rook. So very important position to learn, in my opinion, as a novice Jobava London player, because it is the top move that my opponents make against me. So the next thing, a position that you're going to want to study is actually in the Chessable course that Grandmaster Simon Williams published, and that is this bishop f5 maneuver. It's important to understand this position because it seems to be not only a top move at my novice rating, but it's suggested as a top move at even higher ratings according to the Chessable course. Now, if we look over at Master Games, you can see that bishop f5 is a top 4 move, and so it's even being played at the master level at quite a high frequency. So I believe it's important to understand what to do in these positions, and the main ideas are going to be to bully this around, have this huge expansion on the queen side, and then start your attack after some stabilizing moves. So really important to understand this bishop f5 move, because it seems to be a secondary idea for masters that is a semi-primary idea even at the lower level. So the third position and line that I'm going to recommend that you learn if you're a novice to the Jobava London system is none other than the King's Indian defense positions. And a lot of times this is where I see it's down here a little bit. You can see it's happened 18 times. My winning percentage isn't very good in this position right now, but I've just recognized that as I've started to climb out of the 800s and claw out of the 800 ratings, that the King's Indian defense is something that players are starting to play. And so I'm using if I come back here, I'm using the Jobava London course that I've paid for to start the process of learning 2G6, which is right here somewhere, I believe. There it is, 2G6. So there's some variations here. There's only 2 theory variations, and there's some the 3G6, there seems to be a lot more variations, but if I look at my openings here, I don't see G6 very often at all on the third move here. Where is it? You can see, I'm sorry, knight, bishop, and now G6 is only 5 times for the third move. So I'm usually seeing a very typical King's Indian type of setup 18 times. And it is important to know what to do against this, because as you start to climb out of the 7 and 800s, my prediction for myself is I'm going to start seeing this more. Therefore, learning this variation in theory is going to be an important part of my progression. So that is the third. Oh, and also, according to the theory section here, players who play this should lose almost all of their games. The black pieces should not be winning very many games in the King's Indian defense against the Jobava London. It is a massive, massive attack that happens. What usually we end up seeing is something like this, and then we immediately attack. Now, most players are doing, well, not most, I've only been in this position 4 times, but if they aren't careful, they are going to lose to this right here. And it's a beautiful kind of, I'm sorry, where is it here? I think you've got to come back to this. You've got to get this pawn out, because you need to free up everything here. So you get this massive, massive attack. Here it is, 73% winning percentage if they're not paying attention, and just continue down this path of letting you run this pawn up the board. So the fourth and final position that I'm going to recommend that anyone interested in the Jobava London system learn is probably, my guess is that players play this opening as the black pieces because they're used to almost everyone playing e4. And so you can see I haven't played very many e4 games, but they're used to this. And what I suspect is when you play d4, a lot of players don't want to play against d4. So instead, as at lower level, they've started learning a gambit. And the England gambit is one of those positions in for the black pieces that I think is out of frustration. Nobody's playing the England gambit at higher levels of play, from my understanding and from what I've looked at. You're not going to see this at the higher levels, but you are going to see this at the lower levels quite a bit. And again, out of frustration of not liking the d4 openings, they just play a gambit instead. And in fact, I recognize that a lot of people abort the game. They don't even do this. As soon as they see d4, some players just abort the game. They don't want to play against it, and I do see this quite a bit. And I've used Chessable again to create my system against the England gambit. And I've done a lot of computer analysis. I've looked at a lot of games that I've lost, and I've given myself my own Chessable course in order to hopefully lose less games against the England gambit and punish the player for a bad opening. And this is a game I had a couple of hours ago. And this is the last game up until this video. This is the last game that I've played on chess.com, and this is exactly what my opponent played. I was 920, he's 902. Saw the d4 and just didn't want to play a straight up game, so thought he'd play a gambit. Little did he know that I have practiced on Chessable.com against the England gambit for many dozens of times. And so when we get into this position, we could just see that this is the exact line that every England gambit player dreams of right up until this. And this is one of those key moves. We give back the pawn, and then we bring the bishop back and we start applying pressure to the queen. And right about here is where I am completely out of my repertoire. This is about as far as I've gotten in learning the lines. So the rest of this is now you're just playing chess. You gave back the pawn, but you're ahead in many different ways. You've got a lot of center control here, and you've got everything kind of covered here. And this position right here is about as good as it gets in refuting the England gambit. So anyway, I'll close for now. I do appreciate anybody who hits the subscribe button. There's nothing more exciting than that. So if you want to support the channel for free, please do that. Put a comment down below if you are a above 1,000 or 1,200 or even more player. What lines should I be learning next? These are the 4 lines that I found the most useful. I'm probably going to end up having to start looking at lines that look like what look like this right here. I've got to really start studying this position right here. And you can see I've done okay, but there's this A6 line, even Simon Williams in his Chessable course says is, can be a pretty decent idea. He covers it, quite a, where is it? Let's see. Yeah, he does cover it right here. So he starts getting into it right. God, I've lost it now. E6, A6. So he starts covering it a little bit right here. There's lots of variations. But if you're an above 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 player and you happen to be watching me stumble around here in the game of chess, I'd love to hear what you think it should be the next step in my progression in learning different lines. So until next time, thanks again for the view.